Sarah, please, why are you doing this?
I can't do this anymore, Daniel.
We can fix this, please.
The divorce papers trembled in Daniel's hands as they slid across the table. "Sign them," Sarah said coldly. Daniel stared at the woman he had loved for 8 years. The woman he had sacrificed for. The woman he had worked countless overtime shifts for. His voice cracked. "Are you really doing this?" Sarah folded her arms and looked away. "I've already made my decision." Daniel swallowed hard. Because of him. The silence that followed was answer enough. A year ago, Sarah would have denied it. She would have rushed to reassure him. She would have laughed at the thought of another man standing between them. Now she simply nodded. "Richard can give me the life I've always wanted." Daniel's face fell. "What about everything we've built together?" Sarah let out a bitter laugh. "What exactly have we built, Daniel? This tiny apartment? A life where we count every dollar before buying groceries?" Daniel looked down. He had no answer. "Sarah." "No," she interrupted. "I'm tired. I'm tired of struggling. I'm tired of watching everyone else live their dreams while I'm stuck here." Daniel's eyes filled with tears. "So that's it." She pushed the papers closer. "Sign them." For several seconds, neither moved. Then Daniel picked up the pen. The moment his signature touched the paper, 8 years of marriage ended. Sarah felt relief. Daniel felt his world collapse. Neither of them knew that this decision would destroy one life and save another. 3 months earlier, Sarah had still called Daniel her husband. Back then, their marriage wasn't perfect, but it wasn't broken either. Daniel worked as an auto mechanic. He left home before sunrise and often returned after dark. His hands were rough from years of hard work. His clothes usually smelled of engine oil. Yet despite everything, he always came home smiling. One evening he walked through the door carrying flowers. Sarah barely glanced up from her phone. "For me?" Daniel asked hopefully. "What?" "The flowers." Sarah sighed. "Just put them somewhere." Daniel's smile faded. A few years ago she would have kissed him. Now she barely noticed him. That night they attended a birthday party hosted by one of Sarah's college friends. The moment Sarah entered the mansion, something changed. Luxury cars lined the driveway. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling. Guests walked around wearing designer clothes and expensive jewelry. Sarah couldn't stop staring. "This house is incredible," she whispered. Daniel smiled. "It is." "You know what Melissa's husband does?" "No." "Investment banking." Daniel nodded. Sarah continued. "They travel 6 times a year." "That's nice." "They own 3 properties." Daniel remained quiet. "They're younger than us." Daniel knew where the conversation was going. It wasn't the first time. On the drive home, Sarah stared silently through the window. Finally she spoke. "Do you ever feel embarrassed?" Daniel frowned. "About what?" "Our life." Daniel's grip tightened on the steering wheel. "No." Sarah laughed bitterly. "Of course you don't." Daniel glanced at her. "What does that mean?" "It means you've settled." Daniel took a deep breath. "I haven't settled, Sarah. I'm working hard." "Working hard isn't enough." The rest of the drive passed in silence. Over the following months, Sarah became obsessed with wealth. Her social media feeds were filled with luxury vacations, designer bags, million-dollar homes, private jets. Everywhere she looked, people seemed richer than her. And every time she compared her life to theirs, resentment grew. One night Daniel found her staring at photos of luxury resorts. "We'll get there someday," he said. Sarah laughed. "When?" Daniel hesitated. "I don't know." "Exactly." Daniel sat beside her. "Money isn't everything." Sarah immediately stood. "That's what poor people say." The words hit him like a punch. He watched her walk away. For the first time, he wondered if the woman he married was disappearing. A few weeks later, everything changed. Sarah attended a charity gala organized by a local business group. Daniel couldn't attend because of work. She arrived alone. That was where she met Richard. The man looked like he had stepped out of a magazine. Tailored suit. Luxury watch. Confident smile. As Sarah stood near the refreshment table, Richard approached. "Excuse me." She turned. "Yes. I've been trying to find the courage to introduce myself all evening." Sarah smiled. "Oh, really?" Richard nodded. "I saw you across the room and thought you were the most beautiful woman here." Sarah laughed. Nobody had spoken to her like that in years. "I'm Richard." "Sarah." They talked for nearly an hour. Richard was charming, funny, successful, everything Daniel wasn't. Or so she thought. Before leaving, Richard handed her his business card. "If you ever want coffee, give me a call." Sarah looked at the card, then at Richard, then back at the card. For a brief moment she remembered she was married. Then she slipped the card into her purse. That night Daniel was asleep when she got home. Sarah quietly climbed into bed. Her hand touched the business card inside her purse. And for the first time in her marriage, she smiled while thinking about another man. The next morning her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She opened the message. "I hope you got home safely. Richard." Sarah stared at the text. Her heart raced. Then another message appeared. "I'd love to see you again." Sarah knew she shouldn't respond. She knew it was wrong. She knew she was crossing a line. But temptation had already entered her life. And temptation was about to become something much more dangerous. Before we continue, if you're enjoying this story, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments. Do you think Sarah should have ignored Richard's message? Or was she already planning to betray her marriage? Let us know below. Sarah stared at the screen for several seconds. Then she typed 3 simple words. "Coffee sounds nice." The moment she pressed send, everything began to unravel. The moment Sarah pressed send, a strange excitement rushed through her chest. It felt wrong. It felt thrilling. Most of all, it felt different. 4 years her life had followed the same routine. Wake up. Go to work. Come home. Pay bills. Repeat. Now suddenly there was mystery. Attention. Possibility. Richard replied almost immediately. "Tomorrow at 2. Sarah stared at the message. She knew Daniel would be at work. She knew she had no reason to be meeting another man. Yet she typed back anyway. "See you then." The next afternoon she spent nearly an hour choosing an outfit. When she finally arrived at the restaurant, she froze. The place looked nothing like the coffee shops she usually visited. Everything screamed luxury. Richard was already waiting. He stood and smiled the moment he saw her. "You look incredible." Sarah felt herself blush. "Thank you." Richard pulled out her chair. Throughout lunch he made her feel like the most important woman in the room. He listened carefully, asked questions, remembered details. Something Daniel used to do before life became difficult. Or perhaps before Sarah stopped noticing. When the bill arrived, Richard paid without even looking at the amount. Sarah couldn't help noticing. The total was more than Daniel sometimes earned in an entire day. As they walked outside, Richard pointed toward a sleek black sports car. "Would you like a ride?" Sarah stared. The car looked like something she had only seen online. "That's yours." Richard smiled. "One of them." One of them. The words echoed in her head. One of them. That night she couldn't stop thinking about him. Daniel noticed her unusual silence during dinner. "Everything okay?"
Fine.
"You seem distracted."
I'm tired.
Daniel nodded. But something felt different. Over the next few weeks, the lunches continued. Then dinners. Then private outings. Richard introduced her to a world she had only dreamed about. Luxury hotels. Exclusive restaurants. Designer stores. Every experience pulled her further away from Daniel. One afternoon Richard handed her a small gift box. Sarah opened it. Inside was an expensive diamond bracelet. Her eyes widened. "Richard, this is too much." Not for someone special. Sarah's heart pounded. Daniel hadn't bought her jewelry in years. Not because he didn't want to. Because he couldn't afford it. When she got home that evening, Daniel noticed the bracelet immediately. "That's beautiful." Sarah instinctively hid her wrist. "Oh, just something I bought." Daniel looked confused. That must have been expensive. It wasn't. The lie came easily. Far too easily. Weeks turned into months. The emotional affair deepened. Sarah found herself comparing the two men constantly. Richard made her feel glamorous. Daniel reminded her of responsibility. Richard represented dreams. Daniel represented reality. One evening Daniel came home exhausted. His face was covered with grease. His back ached from working 12 hours. Yet he still carried a small paper bag. Sarah barely looked up. "What's that?" Daniel smiled. "I remembered you mentioned that bakery downtown." He opened the bag proudly. "I stopped by after work." Inside were her favorite pastries. Daniel expected a smile. Instead, Sarah sighed. "Daniel." "What?" "You really need to stop doing things like this." His smile disappeared. "What do you mean?" "Pastries aren't going to fix our problems." Daniel stared at her. "I wasn't trying to fix anything." "Exactly." Daniel looked down at the bag. The pastries suddenly felt foolish. That night he sat alone in the kitchen long after Sarah went to bed. For the first time, fear entered his heart. He was losing her, and he didn't know how to stop it. A week later, Richard invited Sarah onto his yacht. The moment she stepped aboard, she felt as though she had entered another universe. Champagne, luxury furnishings, private staff, everything sparkled. As the yacht drifted across the water, Richard turned toward her. "Do you know what I like about you?" Sarah smiled. "What?" "You deserve more than you've settled for." The words struck deep, because they echoed her own thoughts. Richard moved closer. "You've spent years sacrificing your happiness." Sarah looked away. "My husband is a good man." Richard nodded. "I'm sure he is. But being good doesn't always mean being enough." Sarah felt her defenses weakening. Richard gently touched her hand. She didn't pull away. At that moment she crossed a line she could never uncross. A few days later Daniel found a receipt inside Sarah's purse. A luxury restaurant. 2 dinners. Hundreds of dollars. He stared at it, then stared at Sarah. "Who were you with?" Sarah froze. "What?" "The restaurant." Immediately her heart started racing. "A friend." Daniel's eyes narrowed. "What friend?" Sarah looked away. "Why are you interrogating me?" "I'm asking a simple question." The argument exploded. Voices rose. Accusations flew. Finally Daniel asked the question he had been terrified to ask. "Are you seeing someone else?" The room fell silent. Sarah didn't answer. That silence hurt more than any confession. Daniel felt his stomach drop. "Sarah." She crossed her arms. "What if I am?" The words hit him like a truck. "You are." "I didn't say that." "You basically did." Sarah rolled her eyes. "You know what? Maybe none of this would be happening if we weren't constantly struggling." Daniel stared at her. "So this is about money?" "It's about everything." Daniel shook his head slowly. "I would give you anything if I could. But you can't." The cruelty in her voice shocked even her. Daniel looked devastated. For several seconds he couldn't speak. When he finally did, his voice was barely audible. "I love you." Sarah looked away. The words no longer moved her. A few days later Richard made his move. They were sitting inside a luxury penthouse overlooking the city. The skyline glittered through the massive windows. Richard handed her a glass of wine. Then he said the words she had secretly been hoping to hear. "Leave him." Sarah's breath caught. "What?" "Leave Daniel." The room suddenly felt smaller. Richard moved closer. "I can give you everything you've ever wanted." Sarah's pulse raced. "Richard." "You deserve happiness." She thought about the mansion, the yacht, the jewelry, the lifestyle. Then she thought about Daniel. His small apartment, his stained work clothes, his endless struggle. For the first time, the choice seemed obvious. A week later Daniel walked into the apartment and found divorce papers sitting on the table. He froze. His hands started shaking. Sarah stood nearby, expressionless, cold. Determined, Daniel looked at the papers, then at his wife. No. Sarah remained silent. No,
Sarah,
he repeated. Tell me this isn't happening.
why are you doing this?
It is. Daniel felt his knees weaken.
Can't do this
We can
anymore,
fix this.
Daniel.
I don't want to. His eyes filled with tears.
Please.
8 years, Sarah. She looked away. I've made my decision. Daniel's voice broke. Do you love him? The silence lasted several seconds. Then Sarah nodded. Daniel closed his eyes. His heart shattered. What he didn't know was that the nightmare he was living was only the beginning. What Sarah didn't know was that the dream she was chasing was about to become the biggest mistake of her life. If you're still watching, hit that like button and subscribe because the biggest twist in this story is coming. And tell us in the comments, if you were Daniel, would you fight for the marriage or walk away forever? Sarah thought she was about to enter the best chapter of her life. In reality, she was only a few steps away from losing everything. 3 weeks later, the divorce was finalized. Just like that, 8 years of marriage became a signature on a piece of paper. Daniel walked out of the courthouse looking like a man who had lost everything. Sarah walked out feeling free. Richard was waiting outside in a luxury SUV. The moment she saw him, she smiled. He stepped forward and wrapped his arms around her. How do you feel? Relieved. Richard kissed her forehead. From now on, things are going to be different. Sarah believed him. She wanted to believe him. For the first few weeks, everything felt like a dream. Richard moved her into a luxurious penthouse. She no longer worried about bills. No more counting every dollar. No more sacrificing things she wanted. Designer clothes filled her closet. Expensive jewelry covered her dresser. Luxury restaurants became normal. For the first time in years, she felt important. Whenever friends asked how she was doing, she made sure they knew. Life has never been better. She posted photos online. Luxury vacations. 5-star hotels. Expensive gifts. The attention felt addictive. Every like and comment seemed to validate her decision. One afternoon she ran into an old friend. The woman smiled. You seem happy. Sarah grinned. I finally stopped settling. The words felt good at the time. She had no idea how much she would regret them later. As the months passed, subtle changes began to appear. At first they seemed small. Richard started answering calls in private. Sometimes he disappeared for hours without explanation. His warmth slowly faded. The affectionate man who once flooded her with attention became distant. Cold. Distracted. Sarah tried to ignore it. Every relationship had challenges. That was what she told herself. But deep down, something felt wrong. One evening she prepared a romantic dinner. Richard arrived home nearly 2 hours late. Instead of thanking her, he barely looked at the table. I'm tired. Sarah forced a smile. I made your favorite. I'm not hungry. Then he walked straight to the bedroom. Sarah sat alone at the table. The candles burned down slowly. The food went cold. For the first time, she felt a tiny stab of fear. A few weeks later, she noticed something else. Richard had stopped talking about the future. Whenever she mentioned marriage, he changed the subject. Whenever she brought up long-term plans, he seemed uncomfortable. One night she finally confronted him. Where is this relationship going? Richard looked up from his phone. What do you mean? I mean us. We are together. That's not what I'm asking. Richard sighed. What do you want me to say? Sarah stared at him. She didn't like his tone. She didn't like the look in his eyes. Most of all, she didn't like the feeling growing inside her chest. The feeling that she may have made a terrible mistake. Several days later, she received a shocking phone call. It was Daniel's sister. Sarah almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of her. Hello. The woman hesitated. Have you heard about Daniel? Sarah frowned. What about him? He got promoted. Sarah remained silent. Apparently he's managing several locations now. Oh. There are rumors he's becoming very successful. Sarah forced herself not to care. Good for him. After hanging up, she tried to forget the conversation. But she couldn't. That night she searched Daniel's social media. What she found surprised her. Daniel looked different. Confident. Happy. Healthy. He was smiling in every photo. For months Sarah had imagined him miserable. Instead he seemed to be thriving. The discovery irritated her more than she wanted to admit. Weeks later, everything fell apart. It happened on an ordinary Tuesday morning. Sarah woke up and found Richard sitting in the living room. His expression was serious, almost uncomfortable. Immediately her stomach tightened. Something was wrong. Richard. He looked at her. We need to talk. The words instantly triggered panic. Sarah sat down. What is it? Richard took a deep breath. Then he delivered the sentence that changed everything. I'm leaving. Sarah blinked. What? I'm ending this relationship. For several seconds she thought she had misunderstood him. Then reality hit. No. Richard looked away. It's over. Sarah stood abruptly. What are you talking about? I can't do this anymore. Her heart pounded violently. You said you loved me. Richard remained silent. You told me we'd build a future together. Still silence. The fear inside her rapidly turned into desperation. What happened? Finally Richard spoke. The truth happened. Sarah frowned. What truth? Richard reached into a drawer. Then he pulled out a folder. Slowly he placed it on the table. What is that? Something you should have seen a long time ago. Sarah opened the folder. Inside were documents, bank statements, property records, investment portfolios. She stared in confusion. Then her eyes widened. The name on every document was the same. Daniel. Her breathing stopped. What is this? Richard looked directly at her. The truth. Sarah flipped through the papers. Millions of dollars. Properties. Investments. Business holdings. The numbers seemed unreal. Her hands began shaking. No. It's real. No. Richard nodded slowly. Daniel was wealthy long before you left him. Sarah felt the room spinning. What are you saying? I'm saying the man you divorced was already a millionaire. The folder slipped from her hands. Papers scattered across the floor. Her entire body went numb. This isn't possible. It is. Sarah backed away. Why would he hide it? Richard answered quietly. Because he wanted someone to love him for who he was. The realization hit like a freight train. Every complaint, every argument, every insult, every comparison. Suddenly they replayed inside her mind. And for the first time, she saw herself clearly. She had thrown away a loving husband for money, only to discover the husband had the money all along. Tears streamed down her face. Richard continued. I thought you should know before I leave. Sarah stared at him. You knew. He nodded. You knew this entire time. Yes. The betrayal was overwhelming. You used me. Richard looked guilty. No. Your greed used you. The words cut deeper than any knife. Hours later Sarah found herself standing outside Daniel's house. Her hands trembled as she knocked. The door opened. Daniel appeared. For a moment neither spoke. Sarah immediately burst into tears. Daniel. He looked calm. Almost peaceful. A complete contrast to the broken man she had left months earlier. I know everything, she whispered. Daniel nodded. I figured you would eventually. I made a mistake. Silence. A terrible mistake. Daniel said nothing. Tears poured down her cheeks. I was selfish. Still silence. I was blind. Daniel looked at her carefully. Finally he spoke. What do you want from me? Her voice cracked. Another chance. The answer came instantly. No. The single word shattered her. Please. No. I love you. Daniel's eyes filled with sadness. No, Sarah. Yes, I do. Daniel slowly shook his head. You loved what you thought was missing. She broke down completely. Please forgive me. Daniel sighed. I forgave you months ago. Hope flashed briefly across her face. Then he continued. But forgiveness doesn't mean I want you back. The hope vanished. Daniel stepped outside. The day you left, I thought my life was over. Sarah listened through tears. But eventually I realized something. What? I deserve someone who would stay when life was difficult. Every word struck her heart. You didn't leave because I was poor. Daniel paused. You left because your loyalty had a price. Sarah could not argue. Because it was true. Daniel looked toward the horizon. I genuinely wanted you to be happy. I was happy. No. Daniel shook his head. You were excited. That's not the same thing. The painful truth left her speechless. Daniel took a step back toward the door. This is goodbye, Sarah. She immediately panicked. No. It's time. Tears streamed down her face. Please. But Daniel simply smiled sadly. Then he closed the door. And this time, it was forever. A year later, Sarah lived in a small apartment. Most of the luxury items were gone. The expensive lifestyle had vanished. The friends who celebrated her choices had disappeared. The excitement she once chased no longer existed. What remained was regret. Deep, painful regret. One afternoon she saw Daniel by chance. He was walking through a shopping district. Beside him was a beautiful woman. They were laughing together. Happy, peaceful, content. Daniel noticed Sarah standing across the street. For a brief moment their eyes met. He smiled politely, then continued walking. Without hesitation. Without regret. Without looking back. And in that moment, Sarah finally understood the lesson she had learned too late. Real wealth was never the cars. Never the jewelry. Never the mansions. Real wealth was loyalty, trust, love. And the husband she had abandoned had given her all three. She had traded them for an illusion. And by the time she understood their value, they were gone forever. If this story touched you, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications for more emotional stories. Also tell us in the comments, do you think Daniel made the right decision by refusing to take Sarah back, or should he have given her a second chance? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Until next time, remember this. Sometimes the greatest losses in life aren't the things we lose. They're the people we willingly let go.